Whether you're hitting the road or kicking back in the cab, it's time to take a load off with Big Rig Banter. Powered by alltruckjobs.com, your source for finding the trucking jobs drivers really want. Get ready to shift into gear and let the conversations roll.
All right. Hello and welcome, truckers. The date is September 4th, and you're listening to the 37th episode of Big Rig Banter. I'm your host, Troy Diffenderfer.
And I'm your favorite co-host, Lenay Rule.
And we have a very interesting episode on tap for today. We're covering some pretty big news within the industry. Lenay, why don't you give us a little preview of that?
Sure. So apparently the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, everyone's favorite, is proposing to change some rules around the hours of service for truck drivers.
Yeah, so we're going to be jumping into that, giving you guys some more details, really taking it step by step and breaking it down for you truckers and what you can expect in the future. But before we jump into that, Lenay, we have a pretty exciting event going on next week, and I think you truckers are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, next week is Truck Driver Appreciation Week, so we're going to be doing trivia all week long on our Facebook page, which you can have the chance to win a $100 gift card at the end of the week.
Yeah, truckers, again, we encourage you to reach out and answer some of those trivia questions. I think it'll be a good time, and yeah, you're going to get $100 to spend wherever you want, so that's always great too if you win.
Yeah, so the trivia will be on alltruckjobs.com's Facebook page, so be sure to check that out. Alltruckjobs.com is an online job board website specifically for truck drivers, so if you're looking for a trucking job, be sure to go online and you can find some jobs there too.
And speaking of trucker appreciation, you know, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is talking about changing up some more driver hours of service rules to make them more flexible. So we're going to break those down right now in the main topic of the episode. It's a hotly debated topic already, and I'm sure you truckers have your own opinion on it. So again, make sure to reach out to us using the hashtag BigRigBanter to jump in on that conversation as well. But Lenay, why don't you kick things off? There's a lot of details going into this, so we're going to try and break it down as much as we can and go kind of one point at a time and what changes you might be seeing in the near future.
Yeah, so before we get into breaking down the 5 things that they're contemplating changing, just kind of give everyone some background so you keep in mind why these changes are even being talked about. When the ELDs went into effect, a lot of drivers, as you know, have been really upset about the regulations around how many hours they can drive. If they hit traffic or bad weather or anything like that, they're like having to stop before they can get to places on time, and it's, you know, killing their the amount of money that they can make, essentially. So there's a lot of just discontentment around the regulations right now. Troy, you have anything to add to that before we get into it?
No, again, that's what a lot of these rules are supposedly going to address, these kind of stops and starts and these breaks that drivers don't really want. And it's going to address, and sleeping time, I think initially when these ELDs rolled out, some of these changes were meant to address that and allow truckers the opportunity to get some sleep on the road, but ultimately it's affecting the money that goes into their pocket, and I think there's a lot of truckers out there that struggled after these rules went into effect.
Yeah, I mean, these drivers, many of them have been driving for a long, long time, and they're used to staying awake. So where I see where the government's trying to make things safer and not have people awake for so many hours at a time, I also see the driver's point of view where, they've been doing it for so long, why slow down now? Now you're talking about cutting their income when they've been making this much all along.
Yeah, and I think in some cases they're just looking at this raw data and looking at truckers as just another number and trying to make these regulations based on statistics instead of maybe opinions of people that are actually in the industry and putting in the work. So I think that's a huge role as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So to get into it, there are 5 things that could potentially change. And just so you guys know, you can go online and voice your opinions on this. So In the show notes, we'll provide a link for you to do that. But anyway, the first thing that they want to change is the rules around the 30-minute break. So basically right now, to take a 30-minute break, you have to go off duty. They're talking about changing it so that you could remain on duty but not driving as your break time instead of having to switch to off duty. So when you're stopping to get a cup of coffee, go to the bathroom, get gas, all these stops can count towards your break time instead of having to go off duty and sit there for a straight half hour.
Yeah, so ultimately this will just create less stops for you and will provide some more flexibility while you're on the road. And that kind of ties into number 2. So this one was a little confusing, but I think I can dissect it for you truckers. It has to deal with the sleeper berth changes. So currently you have 2 breaks, so you have to spend 8 or 9 hours during this 10-hour total break time in the sleeper berth. And then in a separate break, you can use 1 or 2 hours in the sleeper berth or doing off-duty tasks. So the proposed change would give you 7 hours for your sleeper berth break and 3 hours for your sleeper berth / off-duty break. So essentially it gives the drivers more flexibility when it comes to how you spend your time while you're not driving. Some drivers don't need 8 or 9 hours of sleep, so they often find themselves just sitting in the sleeper cab, kind of just waiting until that time goes down. So this change could give you more flexibility when it comes to how you use your off-duty time and how you use your sleeping time as well, which is definitely something that drivers are looking for.
Yeah, I think I definitely don't get 7 hours of sleep a night, so I'd be going a little stir-crazy if I were stuck in the cab like that.
For sure, and there's many drivers like that, and some maybe prefer a longer nap or a longer time to just get some other off-duty stuff done.
Yeah, for sure. The third thing that they might change is rules around pausing the off-duty clock. So this essentially means that instead of having to drive through rush hour to get as much of your driving into the 14-hour window as possible, you could actually stop for 3 hours mid-shift as long as you take your full off-duty break at the end of your shift. So basically, if you know you're coming up into a major traffic jam, right now you're thinking, well, I'm on duty and I've got to stay on duty for the straight 14 hours. With this change, you could say, well, I'm going to waste a lot of driving time just sitting still in traffic, so I'm going to pull over, take a 3-hour break, and then jump back on the road once this traffic clears out. As long as at the end of that, once you get where you're going, you take your full 10-hour break.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the biggest things that truckers have been vocal about. I mean, we see it on our Facebook, different comments about truckers that are losing money because they're stuck in traffic and there's nothing they can do. And it's definitely got to be disheartening to watch that clock tick by and realize that you're not really going anywhere. So if this change does happen, that could hopefully help prevent situations like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing kind of tied into that is if you're facing bad weather, you can add 2 additional hours to your driving time, obviously if this change is approved. So basically that would mean that you could drive for 16 hours instead of 14 hours if you hit snow or there's a tornado warning or anything like that where you feel like you need to, you're going to need more time to get through that weather safely.
And again, truckers, if this regulation and rule does go in, make sure to use your best judgment. Obviously, driving in bad weather, we want you to still be safe out there. Remember, don't risk it if the weather does get too bad. But again, hopefully this regulation could provide some more flexibility if it does go through. And one last proposed regulation for you short-haul drivers out there. There is a rule being batted around that could extend the maximum on-duty period from 12 to 14 hours and extend the distance limit within which the driver may operate from 100 air miles to 150 air miles. So again, that could be more money in your pocket if this regulation does go through.
Yeah, and like I said, there's an open comment on the government website for this. We'll include that link in our show notes. But you can, you have up until October 7th to go on and comment on that. So if you have any opinion about that, be sure to go on that website, leave your comments, and in the meantime, reach out to us on Twitter, #BigRigBanner, and just let us know what you're thinking about these changes.
Yeah, and we've already been doing research and looking at some of your comments. Truckers, we're not just looking at some of these news articles, but we do want to get a temperature on how you truckers feel about these regulations that could be going in as well.
Yeah, there's already some comments posted on the website that are listed publicly with names and everything, and it seems like a lot of drivers are still really disappointed that they have to rely on a computer to tell them whether or not they're too tired to drive. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at the comments, it looks like there's a lot of frustration still.
Yeah, and from an outsider perspective, many might see this and say, oh, they're looking out for the safety, and these are going to be great regulations to potentially pass. But many truckers feel that the regulators are considering the opinions of everyone except those who are making a living as truck drivers. We found the consensus is that while these changes are deemed to be, quote, for the safety of the driver, end quote, they're nothing more than smoke and mirrors and not actually looking out for those doing the driving.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, like with everything, there's good intentions, but maybe not so much thinking about the driver's perspective because, like I said earlier, you guys have been on the road, you've been doing this a long time, and obviously you already have your routine and you know how long you can drive and you know when to pull over.
For sure, but luckily for you drivers, there is a forum so you can voice your opinion, and again, that link will be in the show notes. And again, we want to hear what you have to say using the hashtag BigRigBanter. Voice your opinion with us. Let us know what you think of these potential regulations. And for that forum, you have until October 7th to get on there and leave your opinion as well.
Yeah, and don't forget to leave us a review. I hope this episode was informative and gave you some things to think about. Be sure to go to BigRigBanter.com, leave us a review, and sign up for our newsletter.
For sure. And truckers, if you're looking for a job out there, be sure to check out alltruckjobs.com. They've got everything there. If you're looking for a trucking job or just some resources, it's a great website to check out, so make sure to head on over there as well.
And I have one more thing to say before we wrap things up. The next time you hear from us, Troy will be a married man. So if any of you truck drivers out there have any words of advice for Troy before his wedding day, you can just private message us at Big Rig Banner and let us know what Troy should know before he says I do.
Well, thank you, Lenay. What's one piece of advice you would give me as someone who works closely with me every day and often feels like you're my work partner? So let's give me one piece of advice on how I should handle marriage.
My only piece of advice would be if you take guacamole home for your fiance, make sure to also bring her a bag of chips.
That's a story for another That's a story for another day, truckers. But why don't we wrap things up, Lenay? Once again, I'm your co-host, Troy Diffenderfer.
And I'm your favorite co-host, Lenay Rule.
And this has been Big Rig Banter.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Big Rig Banter. For your next job, check out alltruckjobs.com, the premier online source for finding the best driver jobs in the country. Browse hundreds of positions by freight or driver type to get back on the road with confidence. Click subscribe to keep the conversations coming. Until next time on Big Rig Banter.